All right, it's being recorded.
It's being recorded. Okay. Great. So, hi everybody. Welcome to TST meeting for ONOS. Today, we're going to just discuss a couple of housekeeping issues. First, Uyen is going to take us through some changes in the ONOS release schedule and motivations behind it. And then also afterwards, I'd like to, and maybe Bill can help set the context for kind of a request to help support some of our ONOS and core partners with some hands-on support, basically. Anyway, Uyen, do you want to take that first?
Okay. So we're moving ONOS to a 4 months release cycle, similar to Cord. What we're doing though is we're staggering them by 2 months so that we can incorporate the latest version of ONOS into the Cord distribution. So Cord releases will move to mid-Feb, mid-June, mid-October, and ONOS releases will move to mid-April, mid-August, and mid-December. So what we're going to do is we'll have release planning for ONOS next week, but that would be for the mid-April release instead. So there'll be plenty of time to get features in.
So when you say we, who's we? Is this a decision from the ONOS board, or is this ONOS ONF executive decision, or where's this coming from?
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening to the conversation. You're just talking about the change in cadence of ONOS? Yeah, so this was to create alignment between Cord and ONOS. Right.
So this is an ONF board decision?
No.
It's just a
release planning team decision? I'm just wondering where this came from. Is this a proposal, or is this?
No.
It sounds like it's a decision that's already been made.
Yeah, it was a discussion between Asim, Time, and
It really
Yeah.
just
just the delivery
I would
team.
say call it extended
Yeah.
staff of
Yeah.
Larry and so forth, right? It's a way of simplifying, because otherwise we're on two different cadences. The priorities and dependencies become a big mess, feeding one to the other. So sure, if there's a disagreement that this is a terrible thing to do, we'd certainly entertain that. I guess the point was nobody imagined that there'd be any big worries about us, going to 3 per year instead of 4 per year and making it easier planning and easier alignment. But sure, if there's problems, let's bring them up and deal with them.
Yeah. Plus, also one of the benefits of this would be to close the gap between the version of ONOS used in Cord. Right now, it's pretty much fixed at 6 months or more, and this will bring it to about a 2-month gap most, with still enough kind of cantilever effect to issue minor releases if need be.
So I thought from the technical point of view, the goal, we had this desire to be releasing ONOS more frequently rather than less frequently, right? Like we talked about doing like mid-cycle releases or every 3 weeks or, every sprint and stuff like that. So I don't know, is that still a goal that people think is a good idea that we should shoot for?
Well, I mean, we've been doing that on a sprint boundaries, like we've been releasing the V versions.
Yeah.
So I think in that regard, it's kind of orthogonal, but I think the whole point of the major releases is to kind of set a velocity vector towards a specific goal.
Well, so I guess one of the things, right, is that I understand that if you view ONOS as like a distro, it makes sense to have a time-based cadence that's somewhat predictable. But the way that we've been sort of doing, the reason I bring this up is because in the TST previously we've talked about 2 things. One is more frequent cadence releases, and the other is semantic versioning. And in terms of semantic versioning, the API versions and when API features and when non-backwards compatible features, changes to configuration, etc., are introduced, that kind of dictates when things are released and what the version numbers and stuff like that should be. I guess that's sort of orthogonal to whether or not ONOS gets released on a quarterly or every 4 month or 6 month or yearly basis. But it would be probably nice to decouple the notion of sort of the release of ONOS components from the release of ONOS like as a whole system.
So yeah, so I guess to that point and to the point that Jonah just made with the more frequent releases, again, this is mostly about planning the work towards some sort of a named release. What we really, that doesn't stop us from releasing intermediate things in between, or potentially calling how we versioning. It's entirely different, right? Versioning it in accordance with the semantic versioning is something that we can and should probably do separately. This is purely just for planning the work, aligning the work, and kind of making sure that we march towards a certain convergence point. And that convergence point is on for staggered 4-month releases, kind of a cord and ONOS are kind of rotated at 120 degrees apart.
Cord has the same goal to release, more often and do minor types of things.
Exactly.
But they also need a point in time when they can create a distro that customers can pick up and use, right? So I agree. I think it's kind of orthogonal.
Yep.
So it's a planning tool, right?
I mean, I guess the thing that I'm thinking about is like if you look at most Linux distributions, for example, right? They incorporate like a certain kernel version. They incorporate certain versions of certain packages, and then the idea is that that combination of components is tested together, and then you certify that all these components work together, and then you have your distro. And you may have like incremental improvements on your distro as you realize like, okay, we need to make some bug fixes or include some new package versions without impacting the overall stability of the system.
Correct.
But I guess.
And how would you see this different from that?
Well, the thing is with ONOS, we've tightly coupled the release of ONOS, the minor version number bumps with ONOS, to the quarterly release cadence. And in this case, it might be the case that you have like a stable ONOS distributed core, and then you might have like, marching forward on that, which is kind of some point in the future, some enhancements to the core, or some application you might hold back, or you might push forward depending upon its stability. But I guess there's a strong tension between, like, we want to ship stuff that's stable, and we want to allow master to move forward fairly rapidly, and we want to be time bounded and time boxed, right? And it's like achieving all of those things, like stability, feature velocity, and the time box release is like pick 2.
Well, no, I mean, so clearly we're on a train. We're just simply we're just changing the spacing out of the train to make it easier to plan and to be able to basically build a couple of the two separate trains of ONOS and core. That's all we're doing.
No, but it's the thing that Jonah said, right? Which is we've talked about in this meeting previously, increasing the velocity of our release cadence, because the velocity of our release cadence is the velocity of the version numbers that we push up and release. And so allowing people to make changes to the system and see those changes reflected in published versions of the system is now happening.
Right.
More
That's one way to solve the issue of cord being so far behind. It's give cord like more titles to shoot for, basically.
No, basically, so you're just talking about having some fixed anchors in the rock, so to speak, for ONOS to grasp on, right?
I guess what I'm saying is that like the underlying components may evolve at different paces and may have features that come in at different paces and may make incompatible changes. And it's really difficult to look at an overall ONOS version and determine that at the moment. And increasing the release cadence is only going to just create a bigger dip that's harder for someone to figure out whether or not there's been incompatible changes or not.
I guess I'm not following.
I guess what I'm saying is that like if you have release points that come out on a fairly regular or fairly frequent cadence, and an understanding through version numbers about whether or not the changes are likely to be compatible or incompatible with code that's been built against them, then it's a lot easier for someone to do upgrades than if they get a fairly opaque version string that comes out on a quarterly or 4-month basis. You look at that and you're like, I don't know whether this is going to work or not. You try to do it, it doesn't work at all.
Okay, so semantic versioning is going to be dealt with separately, right? So, and we should tackle it. It's just not right now the time to do it, or unless you have time to do it, we're not going to do it right now. So forget about the versioning for right now. Just the semantic versioning. I'm not disagreeing that it's something we need to tackle, that we should tackle, but just simply not now. So I guess I don't see where the issue lies when Cord aims at a specific version, basically a specific set of functionality of ONOS. I guess I'm not following.
So if you, I guess what I'm saying is that in the absence of releasing subcomponents of ONOS on their own cadence, and in absence of something like semantic versioning, all we're doing is we're creating a larger diff that someone who's depending on the subsystem will have to digest in order to figure out if and how to apply the changes.
So we're shrinking the diff.
No, you're making it bigger.
You're
going from 3 months to 4. You're adding an extra month.
We're going from 6 months to Cord can't even digest the most recent version. They're anchoring 2 months back. So we're actually shrinking it from 6 months to 2 months.
Well, isn't 6 months to 2 months?
But they're not. They've been pointing 1.8, 1.9, skipping 1.9, going 110. Then they skip 111 and going 112. So they've been consuming it at the 6 month bucket.
Now you're giving them 4, but we already have 3. They could consume it 3 months.
Not with sort of.
We don't have consistent.
You don't have exactly. The
I guess what I'm trying to say here is that I'm not convinced that doing the change that you're proposing is actually addressing the root of the problem. I think the root of the problem is that understanding whether the changes are compatible or not, and understanding whether you can accept a new version of code and how to migrate from an old version to a new version is difficult to do. That's why Cord can't digest it. And making that
don't think that's
more opaque and a larger chunk of.
Yeah, I don't think that's the reason. Now, in theory, I agree that in theory the semantic versioning is required. Without it, in theory, you can't do it. But you can still do it in practice without having a semantic versioning, by just having some sort of awareness of what's in this bucket, what's in that bucket, what's in this bucket. Now, we already said that this is purely for just lining up large chunks of work to make sure that teams work towards some sort of convergent goal. This is primarily about planning, and nothing stops us in between to be releasing minor anchor versions or some sort of intermediate releases as we march. We can still do it on a month boundary if we feel we have enough QA to be able to do sort of the compatibility testing, and they can grasp onto those intermediate milestones. I don't see what's. So to me, yes, it's not perfect, but it's certainly improving the situation from where things are today, unquestionably so. Yes, it's not perfect, but it's better, and so the whole point is to improve the system. So the worst enemy of better is really perfect.
So let's say Cord has some ONOS dependencies, right? And those ONOS dependencies don't get resolved by the distribution timeframe. Does that mean that Cord is going to require sort of additional distribution numbers before it gets to its release version?
That's the whole point of staggering, so that you can be planning better, so that ONOS can aim towards a mark and still leave enough of a kind of a hangover period through which we can issue minor things. As they start to integrate with the release version of ONOS, they're going to discover some shortcomings, and that will give us enough time to react to those changes. The planning is now on much more predictable intervals, because they're basically kind of just phase shifted, but the period of the phase is the same.
I'm confused as to why Cord can't just use the milestone releases the minor milestone or beta or release candidate releases, and then you just release them together.
That's a question for core, but so far they haven't been able to, right? They haven't been able to even use every single 3-month bucket. Part of the reason is the unpredictable phase, because we were not aligned, and so sometimes it ended up being the same month. Sometimes we ended up being 1 month after them. It's so.
So part of it is we're trying to make planning a bit more efficient, right? So with the cadence, then we understand, okay, with core command, there are dependencies on ONOS, and we can make sure that we plan those up front. So it's a bit of both. It's making sure that we stage the planning so that we get functionality in as we need them. And so the schedule and the way we staggered it is more predictable to make that happen.
So that helps Cord, but what about a commercial partner that wants to support a commercial distro of ONOS? What about someone that wants to build a Cord type thing?
Again, I'm going to
maintenance
Sienna,
releases
who's 2 versions behind, right?
Yeah, they're at least two behind
Yeah.
all the time.
So wouldn't it make sense to talk to people like Sienna and figure out where their pain points are and try to create a system that addresses the pain points rather than just changing the cadence?
Sienna's here, by the way. Sorry for being late.
So,
Careful what you say.
Oh, no. No, absolutely don't be careful what you say.
Well, would you like to add anything, David?
So the pain points, I don't know who else is on. The pain points is no one's looking for a commercial supported version right now more than anything else, or no one's paying for it. Let me put it that way. That's the real issue, right? Everything we've done, we've upstreamed. So basically our source code is the open source code is as it should be. So we're not really running into pain points in terms of a cadence of release right now. That's just not our pain point. And all we're really doing on top of ONOS right now, because we upstream everything, is tagging it with the Sienna version. So when you do a summary, you see a Sienna banner or a Sienna version number, right? So it's no code difference. And again, the cadence isn't the issue for us right now. The bigger issue is we are trying to deploy in Docker, and as we talked about the other TST meeting, being able to do Docker in Kubernetes or Docker in Swarm, or even Docker on raw hardware where the cluster forms automatically would be a big improvement. Those are the things we care about. The stability, the HA, less so the cadence.
again, how often we create releases that are stable anchors in the ROC is completely independent of how often we plan towards meeting at a specified goal of 4-month interval. So that's really primarily what that was motivated by. At least that's how I understood it.
Right. Yep. I mean, ideally, we'd release continually.
Right.
Exactly. Yep. And we, like you said, we would roll the versions, independently for each component as it changes.
From a component perspective.
Exactly. Because there's plenty of times where we're building versions of apps where nothing has changed for the last 3 versions, and we simply just build the version just because.
Yeah.
So
I think that's one of the biggest problems for core trying to digest it, right? Is that we had the same Reddit app stuck in the ONOS code base, and it's that which is really causing the problem.
So I don't think
so. There's 2 things, right? It's disaggregating that, and then if you were releasing more often, then there's more kind of opportunities to kind of hook onto the train.
So I think there are several different problems here. So the first one is definitely the one that Jordan mentioned. So we definitely want to pull SEM routing out, but the thing is that once we put it out, sometimes we still need to, depend on several core features in ONOS, and that will require ONOS to have a shorter release interval, such that we can have our code in there, and bump out our dependency of ONOS immediately, right? Maybe in like 2 weeks or something.
Yeah.
So this is definitely necessary to have a shorter, even as a beta release, that should be okay. But this would be definitely necessary. The other thing that caused the, that result in, we skip one ONOS version, and then, I think the main reason is that Core is a relatively huge project that would take a significant amount of time to integrate things into the automation process and into the entire system. So that's why we don't do per honest release integration into core, because we just don't have the time to do that. If we want to bump up the honest version or chalice version, every time we release a new honest version, then we just do integration all the time. We don't have any time to do feature development. So that's why we skip one version and then jump directly into the next version.
But then to Brian's point,
But-
semantic.
But isn't it also why would we upgrade? What is in the new version of ONOS that actually affects us? I mean, that's going to help determine when we upgrade
So
cord.
So we usually introduce new features in set routing, right? But if we can decouple that from, I don't know, even if we can decouple set routing from honest core, then every time we introduce new features, we can still bump up. We still need to bump up the set routing version we use in core.
So-
right?
Clearly, right, the semantic versioning remains the goal. This doesn't change it.
Yeah, I think
Disaggregating the code base and consequently versioning each component individually apart from each other, independent of how they're integrated or when they're integrated, remains to be a goal. So that doesn't change with this decision. But all of those goals, both of those goals, disaggregating and semantic versionings are predicated on a significant amount of effort, which we simply cannot expand. At least up to this point, we haven't been able to expand it. And so they will have to remain future goals. In the meantime, we have the benefit here to benefit, the opportunity to benefit from more coordinated planning and giving core a more, more harmonic, I guess, release cycle, and at the same time reduce the overhead of planning for almost kind of major planning sessions for us. That was primarily the motivator and driver behind this. So.
Any further discussion?
I mean, we can try the 4-month thing. I have a hard time believing that it's going to help people without us at least starting to make progress towards the other stuff. And maybe just a clearer roadmap and a clearer set of new features and stuff will be sufficient. But
Well, I think that's easier said than done. I mean, from participating in all of the release planning, to have offset cycles with ONOS and core would be release planning hell, right? It'll just be horrible, right? To get everybody aligned on priorities and then cascade that into dependencies and so forth, right? It's a lot of work, right? And to kind of willingly put it into a more complicated state just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, this was primarily about simplification and reducing planning overhead. Yeah. And I don't see how it makes things worse in any regard.
Yeah, in some sense, I'm a little surprised. I mean, I didn't expect. It's good that you're bringing it all up, but I didn't expect it because to me, it's like we're doing exactly the same thing that we were doing before, right? It's just on 4 months instead of 3 months.
Yeah, the overhead of the planning process goes down.
Right. Yeah, and we saved ourselves overhead. All good points though on the how to decouple and how to get towards better versioning. But I really don't think that this changes that set of issues. Right?
No, not at all. I don't think it affects it at all.
Do you agree?
no, I think I mean the statement you made is that we're going to do planning on a 4-month cadence is a perfectly fine statement to make. But I think what maybe triggered this discussion in the beginning is that there was a comment about ONOS is now going to be released on a 4-month cadence. And that to me means version releases, artifacts, et cetera, and just given some of the conversations we've had in the past, like we've just been talking about how like that just means larger diffs and more to consume and more chance for API changes and a harder time digesting what those changes are.
No, I agree. And
So
then
maybe it's
I'm as much of an
on-
advocate of compressing, being able to continuously release, right?
Yeah.
But I also have this other issue of we can't continuously plan.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. And maybe the points are all orthogonal to the topic at hand.
Yeah.
So apologies if this has been a needless digression.
No apologies needed. It's good that you bring it up.
All right. So I think unless there's any other questions or discussion points.
What about the like we're talking about major releases, right? And, beta releases. I just mentioned that it's necessary for routing to be decoupled from ONOS code. Do we? Well, we don't have to plan for it, right? I mean, it's just in the middle of major releases, but still we want to be able to have that stamp, like the beta stamp or whatever.
Right. So there's a couple of things that are going on. So the minor tick marks in between the releases, right? So the named releases, like the kind of the official ones.
the
We have
major
the,
one.
let's say like 112,
Mm-hmm.
right? 112.x.
Mhm.
Right? Those are the minor releases and patches. Those clearly would still continue. And the idea is here that official versions of code will be attached to those, right? Official version of course will be attached to those. Now the ongoing development of code that kind of overlaps over the same period as some of the current releases being developed against, right? Because there is effectively an overlap.
Yeah, but that I'm not.
2 month overlap.
So if you say that core will stick to the major ONOS release, right? That I'm not sure.
So
that maybe make our problem even more complicated, right? We want to have a shorter release version, release cycle instead of a longer one.
Okay, let me explain. So today it's 6 months. Today the base version, let's say like 110. That's a 6 month old version. Now, granted, you're not anchored to 110.0, you're not anchored to 110.1.
As I mentioned, those
I
are
think
two
we're-
things.
Yes,
The reason we skip version is because we don't have enough time to integrate.
Correct. So the problem is not on us producing things fast enough. It's on the side of being able to adapt to the changes enough, consuming them fast.
Right,
But I don't think we're saying that we're not going to be flexible about creating maintenance releases
Exactly,
with
yes.
functionality or bug
Right.
fixes that Trellis has, right? So that we can pull those versions. But we just need to be deterministic about what version we're pulling into each of the cord releases.
Correct. But I just wanted to point out, the point I was trying to make is there's a 2 month overlap. They're completely symmetrically staggered. So the 2 months of the current release of core is going to be predicated on developing kind of on the functionality ahead of that's not actually fully cooked in ONOS, right? Because that won't be released for another 2 months. So during that period, the idea is that you will be anchored on the beta releases. Those are kind of they're releases as in sort of made in repo, but they're not kind of officially, they're not going to be long-term supported. Now, once we spill over into the official release cycle of the release of the ONOS, then you're going to anchor to that, and from that point onward, the idea is that you will be anchored on top of the .x releases, just like we were in the past. The minor releases, just like in the past.
Okay.
And so that together will help, plus together with the sort of synchronized planning, that will help reduce, together this will help reduce
Okay,
the time.
but when you say core is going to depend on ONOS major release, maybe I misunderstood you. But we should still be able to depend on a minor release, right? Like 1.4 or something.
Correct. But that's what I meant is the official. Yeah, I meant on the official releases, which would be 1.12.x, whatever.
Okay.
But during the first 2 months, you will have to be dependent on beta.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
That's kind of the idea. And so all these things together, at least in practice, should help. Should reduce things.
Yeah, as long as we can use the minor something.
Oh yeah, it's
good.
not going to change. It's going to be effectively the same thing as what we're doing today.
Okay.
Yeah. So unless there's other discussion points, I think we can move to the other discussion point. And do you want to lead that, Bill, or
Sure.
context for that?
Yeah. So Open Networking Foundation, as a way of attracting and maintaining membership, looks to provide value to its members. There's a lot of different ways of doing that. One way that we've thought about helping our members is to give them a little bit of extra guidance and help when they're trying to get issues resolved when they're working with the distributions. And so there's something that we're going to call Developer Assist. And the higher the member that you are, maybe the more support that you can get. Support's the wrong word, really, because, and in our description, we erased the word support from all of it because it has no SLAs associated with it. But it is a way to get some attention of people here at ONF to help guide a person to somebody in the community if they're not getting an answer through just the normal mailing lists, right? So if somebody's out there, and I saw one of these recently, I forget what it's about, but somebody had asked 3 or 4 times for some help. It was one of the Huawei pieces, but so that would kind of reach a threshold and get flagged, and then somebody would help guide that person to somebody in the community that could help them out. Again, there would be no promises, no SLAs or anything, but it would be an additional level of determinism that somebody could actually get to a person that can help them out, right? And that's the value that ONF would bring. And so we're going to add an Atlassian tool of Service Desk to be the point to enter the information and track it to hopefully automate the processes. And then we're going to ask for a rotating person from ONOS and a rotating person from Cord to just keep an eye on it. And we'll see how that goes. And we may have to build some more community support around it as well.
Does that also mean we're going to assign a specific person as a main contact window for our partners?
Yeah. So there'd be one person from ONOS for, let's say, for this month. Okay, your assignment, just, if you get
It's not for that partner, it's for everyone.
it's for everyone. It's for everyone. Yeah. If you get a notification out of this tool that something has gone beyond satisfaction with a member, right? See if you can help them find somebody in the community to help them
Yeah,
out.
but I have a feeling that having a dedicated person for a specific partner would be probably more helpful. Right? It's not like rotating. Like for example, I'm responsible for certain partners, right, and keep growing this relationship instead of having one person responsible for all the partners and then we rotate every month. Right?
It's more than partners. It's all the members. So we have
Members, yeah,
200,
that's what I mean,
right?
yeah.
So we really don't have, unless you want to be responsible
Okay.
for 10 members, right?
But I don't think this is necessarily going to change the existing relationships that we have with some of our partners, Comcast, or AT&T, or whoever we're working on a use case. I think that still will continue, right? This is simply just to make sure that requests don't get lost in the sea of the email chains, which sometimes has happened where that can lead to frustration.
Has ONF considered adding a Square integration to the website for one-time help? Not I mean,
so anyways, if members use this, or if they see it as value, then it helps all of the community by bringing in more members, right, and having members be happier with the community, right? So that's the goal. Now it might just be that the whole community works fine and nobody ever even logs anything. In which case, we have some value that's there that we actually don't have to pay much for, right? So, on the other hand, if 100 companies load on and if the community isn't answering questions, then I don't know. Then the burden will have to be it'll be up to us as kind of the shepherds of this community to find a way to get enough support in the community to help that. And we're going to take responsibility for just putting the mechanisms in place and kind of getting it started, and then we'll see how it goes, see how it works. So so we can send out a link to the
Wiki page. Yeah.
wiki page, right? There's a description of what this is, right? And you can read more about it. But, the idea was to ask for the TST to kind of get it started, right? Ask for somebody in the TST for ONOS, somebody in the TST for Cord to just volunteer, be the first person, watch for a month, and would rotate it to somebody else.
Are you looking for a volunteer right now on the spot? Or?
No, we can do that offline.
Okay, good. All right.
What's the wiki page called?
I'm sorry, I don't have the link handy. It's
Is this a search keyword?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just sent it out to you. To a couple people. I don't have it anymore. Anyways, we'll send it around.
It's developer assist benefits. It's in a wiki open networking org display com. I think that's it for today. Just before we close, I am still in conversations with the Frequentis company from Austria. They asked me to postpone their presentation about their ATM based solution to the kind of later part of the December. So right now it looks like it may be the week of December 18th. When some of their end of the year crunch is over. And they also said one of the benefits of postponing it till then is that they would have data by then about their second project that is using ONOS, which is currently undergoing their factory qualifications. So, which I think is going to be quite interesting. And given the fact that they decided to use it for a second project, that seems to be an indication that the first experience was not at least terribly painful.
Yeah, that's great.
So, anyway, so that's that. So hopefully we'll be able to make it happen before the year's end. And unless anybody has anything else to say, we can probably close it for today. Nope. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
All right. Bye.